And raining yet, Patty?
Yeah, it was. Not bad.
A lot of folks been praying for rain. I know that the fields will like it, and the seeds that have been planted during the drought, waiting for that moisture to spring into life. Bees, butterflies, and the amnots. You ever heard of them? You will now. Bees, butterflies, and amnots. The statement goes on to say, they encourage us not to compare ourselves with others, but look beyond the amnots to the great I am, and move forward into what God has created us to be. So, if that's all you get out of tonight, we can wrap it up, because that's the whole proposition, that's the whole message, all in a nice, neat little package. But if you're like me, you can probably count on both hands and maybe need a little bit more when you've gone through life and said, I can't do that, or that's not who I am, I'm not this, I'm not that. Anybody here ever teach a class? You ever been called a substitute? A class that you didn't think you were prepared to do? So you walk in, the first thing you say, I'm not an artist, but I'm here to teach art class. Yeah, that kind of defeats the purpose before you even start, right? That's when the kids in the back start laughing and throwing things, and doing things they ought not do because you lost them right from the beginning. And that's often what happens if you're lost at the beginning, everybody else is going to be. So it's really important not to, especially as Christians, not to think about I am not something, but what am I because of the great I am? Because that's who's watching over us, right? The great I am. So therefore, whatever it is that God would have for us, I am. I am what I am. Right? So for those of you who remember Papa, those of you that don't, I really sounded stupid. So, all right. God told Moses, I am who I am, and then this is what you are to say to the Israelites. I am sent me to you. I am sent me to you. Interesting the way that he would have to tell the people of Israel. I am. Because think about what they were about to embark on. They had been crying out, suffering in slavery for so long to the emperor of the world, if you will, to the greatest nation on the face of the earth at the time. They were being oppressed, they were slaves, and they cried out to God for rescue, and God says, I am. And you can too. So they needed to look to God. Anyway, when we start to compare ourselves to other things and say, this is what I am, but this is what I'm not, then we can get discouraged sometimes. So I want you to compare, for example, bees and butterflies for a moment. Which one, in your opinion, is better than the other? Which one is more useful? Do you have a preference?
Bees.
We think bees. I think most people would probably come right out and say bees are more useful. What's the job that God gave to bees and butterflies? Pardon? To pollinate. That's their job. They both have the same job, yet they both do it differently, don't they? And we think because oftentimes the bees, they're buzzing around and they make honey too, so we get something sweet out of it, right? But they both do the exact same job, they just do it in different ways. The bees actually, they stay basically within a 2-mile radius of their hive, and they go out and they pollinate, the plants from plant to plant to plant. They're very busy. We think of them as busy little bees, going back and forth, doing this and that, very close to home. They build hives, they build a home, they make space for more bees, and they grow and grow into this colony or in this hive. Butterflies, on the other hand, we may take for granted because all we see them do is what? Flutter around. There's no purpose, there's no aim in their life. They just go with the wind and they're on something. you know, as they flit around and bounce around, and they fly over a house, and then they fly back. They go to this plant, they go to that, and then they sit down, and you can see them go because they've been flitting around, and then they go off to the next. And it doesn't seem like there's any purpose to them. But the bees, on the other hand, when you look at them, it's like, get out of my way. I'm making a beeline to the next one, right? And pardon? Unintended. Thank you. So, the bees get all of our attention because they're always right there. The butterflies get our attention for a moment because they're pretty. But think about it for a minute. The bees travel within a 2-mile radius. Do you know how far the monarch flies? 3,000 miles. 3,000 miles. Guess what they're doing over there? Pollinating. Plant. You know, and it's kind of like people. We can compare each other, and we see people that are builders, that are the ones that sit down and work. When I think of a camp, or when I think of congregations, we think of those people who are the foundation of the church. They're the ones that are always there. You can count on them. They're involved in building. They're always busy doing something. They don't stray too far from the church building because that's the center of their life. And they're concentrating on the things that are necessary to get things built. Everybody sees the results of their labors, right? They get to enjoy the honey, like the bees. You see what's come out of it. But then there are others that seem to come in and go out, and they travel to different places. And what we really don't realize is that the lives that they touch all around the world, everywhere they go. And they take what they've gathered here and they spread it to another place. We don't see that. We don't give them the attention, and therefore we oftentimes, think less of the work that others are doing, because we get into this bad habit of comparing ourselves with other people. And what we need to stop and think and recognize is that God, the I Am, is the one who made you who you are. Okay? And as easy as it is to compare and look at other people and say, oh, they're good and they're not so good, and they're effective and they're not so effective, it's really important that we are careful in those kind of judgments, because we don't see everything. We don't follow the butterflies, do we? We don't see what they accomplish. It's easier to follow the bees because they're close to home, right? We can go check in on them and see if they made it, right? But the butterflies, they go off and do their thing, and we don't know. And it's the same with many of the people. But the thing that I want to encourage us as individuals also, not to make judgments of others, try to be encouraging as you see people using their talents and abilities, but also as you reflect yourself, to yourself, is that as you look at yourself, are you involved in what God has made you, or are you pining for what you are not in what someone else is doing? And so I encourage you, as the scripture says in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, there are different kinds of gifts, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, same Lord. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in every one, it is the same God at work. All these are the work of one and same Spirit, and He distributes them to each one just as He determines. Therefore, whatever we do, we need to work at it with all of our heart, working as for the Lord, not for human masters, as Colossians chapter 3 says. So, I want to just go through a couple of other animals that are mentioned in the Bible, and we might miss them. We might not pay any attention, and there might be a tiny little lesson in each one. As we look at ourselves and the talents and abilities that God has given to us, do we recognize them? Number one. And number two, are we putting them into practice as opportunities arise? Okay? In Genesis chapter 8, anybody know offhand what was in Genesis chapter 8? There's a story about this big boat that finally ran aground, and it was a big boat. There's this giant boat in the Old Testament called an ark, and Noah and his family and all those animals have been cooped up in there for a long, long time. And so finally the boat came to rest in Genesis chapter 8. And 40 days later, Noah opens up a window and he sends out a raven. The raven flies around, can't find anything, he comes back. He sends out a dove, and the dove comes back. Then finally, a third time, he sends out the dove again, and the dove comes back with what? Yes, he comes back with a branch showing that things are alive, and it's time now for the next adventure that God has before. And like the dove, you may be called out at various times to do certain things. And one of those times you're called out, you may return and your beak's empty. You have no olive branch. You have no message that is positive or great. But be patient. Be patient. Because the next time you are sent out, you may be the one to bring back the good news. You may be the one who brings back the great message because of what you found when you went looking. So always be busy like the dove to go out and be obedient where you're sent. But don't expect the same result every single time, because God's always got something in mind. Have you ever done anything and felt like you wasted your time because there were no results? And then by perseverance and you were patient, you go out and you try again, and pretty soon the good things start to happen. So we need to be patient in those kind of things. How about this one? You think God ever used a camel? You remember the story in Genesis chapter 4. Abraham, being very old, he calls to his servant and he says, go find my son a wife. Do you know what the servant did in order to find Abraham's son's wife? Remember what it was?
It's for a drink of water, and they provide water for you and your camels.
That's right. His test was whoever would serve him water, one feed the camels water, water the beast of burden there, then he would know who the woman that God chose. And so that's exactly what happened. He shows up at the well, he sits there, the gal comes along, and the woman was very beautiful. She was the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah. She was a virgin, had never been with a man. She went down to the spring, she filled her jar, came up again. The servant hurried to meet her and said, please give me a little water from your jar. And she would certainly drink, my lord, she said. Quickly lowered the jar to her hands, gave him a drink. And after she had given him a drink, she said, I'll even draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink. You ever stop to think that your presence in somebody's life was an answer to prayer? And think, oh, that's prideful. But think about it for a minute. The people that you have affected in your life or that God puts into your life, you have an opportunity to be a vessel of blessing, to be that which brings out the good, the best in these other people. They give them that opportunity because you're there. So, maybe you're a camel. Right? Maybe you're a donkey. Nobody wants to be a donkey, though. Remember in Numbers 22? Everybody knows what Numbers 22 is, right? Balaam's donkey. Right? Balaam's donkey. Balaam, in Numbers 22, he's headed off to do something he ought not to do. And God warned him, you're not going to be able to say anything but what I give you anyway. So he goes on his way, and God puts an angel in the path with a sword that is going to remove Balaam's life. And the donkey decides, seeing what Balaam could not see, the donkey sees the angel. And I love this story, so I just want to read it. Not the whole thing, but when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam. It's verse 27 of Numbers 22. When the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam. So here he is, his donkey had a flat. He lay flat. So, crushing Balaam's foot against it. As it pressed it, I jumped ahead. Oh, okay, let me back up. The first time, Balaam gets up in the morning, he saddles his donkey, goes to the Moabite officials, but God's very angry that he went. The angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. Balaam was riding his donkey, and his two servants were with him. When the donkey saw the angel the first time, standing in the road with a drawn sword in his hand, it turned off the road into a field, and Balaam beat it to get it back on the road. Then the angel of the Lord stood in the narrow path through the vineyards with walls on both sides. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it pressed close to the wall, crushing Balaam's foot against it. So he beat the donkey again. So then the angel of the Lord moved on ahead and stood in the narrow place where there was no room to turn right either to the right or to the left. And when the donkey saw the angel of the Lord, it lay down under Balaam, and he was angry and beat it with a staff. Then the Lord opened the donkey's mouth. I just think that's hilarious. Does God have a sense of humor? Does God really want good things to happen? Did he really want his angel to kill Balaam? Given him opportunity after opportunity after opportunity. Put a donkey into Balaam's possession that had more sense than Balaam did. And so the Lord opens the donkey's mouth, and it turns to Balaam, and the donkey says, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Now Balaam, I told you, is dumber than a donkey because he talked back to the donkey. And Balaam says, "You've made a fool of me." Imagine. Donkey's thinking it wasn't hard. I added that. It's not in the text. "If only I had a sword in my hand, I would kill you right now." The donkey said to Balaam, "Am I not your own donkey, which you have always ridden to this day? Have I been in a habit of doing this to you? No." And then the Lord opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel of the Lord standing in the road with his sword drawn. And so he bowed down and fell face down. Then he went and he, of course, spoke blessings on Israel instead of cursings, which is what he was going out to do. Maybe like the donkey, you will be stubborn enough to speak the truth and save someone's soul. Maybe you'll be that voice of reason that in a most impossible situation speaks at the right time with the right words. Maybe you'll just be stubborn enough to do that, to save someone's life. In Jonah chapter 1, guess what animal and or not human person I'm going to refer to this time? The big fish. The big fish. What happened? Jonah's run away from God. Big storm. Jonah recognizes his fault, says, "If you toss me over, everything's going to be fine." So they did. Long story short, God had prepared a large fish. Right? "Please, Lord, do not let us die for taking this man's life. The people are praying. Don't hold us accountable for killing an innocent man for you. Lord, have done what you please." So they took Jonah, they threw him overboard. The raging sea grew calm. At this, the man greatly feared the Lord, and they offered a sacrifice to the Lord and vowed to him. Now the Lord had provided a huge fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the belly of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. I used to use this verse to justify picking up hitchhikers. God had prepared this big fish to pick up Jonah as a hitchhiker. Maybe like the big fish, we have been prepared to rescue someone or give them transportation somewhere or to care for their needs. Maybe there's somebody that enters into your life for a short period of time, maybe just days, and gets you to where you need to be to continue your journey. And maybe they're one of the ones that are on the journey, maybe they're the butterfly, to go somewhere and to pollinate and bring the good news of the Lord to someone else, like Jonah was. Here we have a fish swallowing a butterfly, right? So that he can go to Nineveh and preach repentance. Maybe you're a spiritual taxi, that's what I've done. Debbie and I well, I did it, and Debbie was kind enough to not fight me over it. There was a gentleman who I became acquainted with through another preacher who was in need, he and his wife. They didn't have a place to stay for a certain amount of time. They needed to get some things taken care of, and I got word of it through one of the preachers in town, and because of that, I offered our home. And never met, don't know him or his wife, and they came and stayed with us for how many days? 3 days? And then they went on their way. We don't know where they went. I haven't heard from them really since. So I just trust that they were on their way to Nineveh to do the right thing. So I got another one for you. How about when, remember the story of Jesus and the temple tax? They're asking him, should you pay tax? And he says, we don't belong to them, but in order to save some trouble, we're going to go ahead and pay the tax. So he tells Peter to do what? Go fishing. Catch fish. And that first fish catch, open up its mouth, and what do you find? A coin, the exact amount needed to pay the temple tax. Okay? And the thought struck me, here is a fish with a treasure in its mouth, and I wonder sometimes what treasure is inside of each of us. What treasure do you have inside you that can pay what's needed on behalf of someone else? You ever think about it? There's been a lot of people who have used the treasures God has put in their life to bless my family. God gives us different things to utilize. You got treasure inside you, right? A little bit behind, but God has put a treasure in all of us. And at the right time, that what you have is exactly what's needed for the opportunity God presents to you. Maybe your fish. And I can't leave out sheep, right? In Luke 15, 3-7 is where Jesus talks about, suppose 100 sheep. He has 100 sheep and one of them he loses. What does he do? He leaves the 99 and he goes out and finds that sheep. And when he finds it, there's great rejoicing, right? Well, maybe you're the lost sheep and you need to be found. Maybe you're the 99 that needs to hold the fort until he gets back, right? There are times in which, I think about this last Sunday when we were gone, and we've taken vacations before, and there were plenty of sheep here to take care of the needs that were there, to hold the fort, to do whatever is needed, to answer the call that goes out. And so you might be a sheep. And then the last one that I have here is in Luke chapter 22, where Jesus had just told Judas to go off and do what he's got to do, but then he told Peter that he was going to do something as bad as Judas was going to do, at least for the moment. What was Peter going to do that he didn't realize? He was going to deny Jesus 3 times, and then the rooster. Are you a rooster? You might be a rooster. You may be doing what a rooster does. What does a rooster do? He goes about his business and, right? In the morning. That's what he does. It's his natural thing. No special business. He didn't get a phone call from God and said, okay, hold it, ready? 1, 2, 3, now! He wasn't there to listen to Peter. He didn't know what was going on. He was just going on in the natural course of his life, doing what God had given him to do, his regular job, and God used it to change a man's life. Are you like a rooster, where you are just living the Christian life, doing and being who God made you to be? A fish, or whatever it might be, a donkey, camel. You're just being you. And God uses it to change people's life. Don't compare yourself to anybody else. Don't say, I'm not this and I'm not that, therefore I can't and I can't. Say, God made me who I am and He has given me what He's given me, and I'm going to be the best I am that I can be. And so I encourage you with those words tonight. I pray God's name is I am not. God's name is I am. It's all about the I am. So therefore, thank God for making me who I am and who you are. Right? I want to say any questions, like we're going to do a Q&A afterwards. But no, go ahead. Any questions?
Dearest Father, thank you for this time where we can come study your word and look to your creation, Lord, and how you have set up your creation to be recorded throughout history, such that we can learn about who we are, who we should be, and how we can work out who we are into your world, Lord. As we go about this week, we ask that you guide us, show us, and empower us to use the gifts you have already given us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.